July 20th, 1973. Hong Kong, 7:30 in the evening. Bruce Lee tells his friend he has a headache, takes one pill, lies down to nap. He never wakes up. The most dangerous man on the planet. The fastest human being ever filmed. Dead at 32. Brain swollen by 13%. No explanation. 50 years later, we still do not know what killed him. But here is what we do know. 37 years after Bruce Lee died, a baby was born in Japan who would grow up to move exactly like him. Frame by frame, technique by technique, as if the same consciousness was operating the same body. And when Bruce Lee's best friend, the man who trained with him every day for 9 years, heard about this child, he did something unexpected. He flew across the ocean to meet him. Then he took the boy to Bruce Lee's grave. Why? What did he see? Stay with me. Because this case has evidence that most reincarnation stories do not have. Video proof, expert verification, and a reaction from someone who knew Bruce Lee better than anyone alive. Welcome to Circle of Lifetimes. The boy's name is Ryusei Imai, born 2010, Nara, Japan. But before I tell you what he can do, you need to understand what Bruce Lee could do. Because only then will you grasp why this case is so unsettling. Bruce Lee could do 2-finger push-ups, not 10 fingers. 2. There is video. It looks fake. It is not. He could kick so fast that cameras could not capture it. They filmed at 24 frames per second. His kicks happened between frames, invisible to the technology of his time. He invented the 1-inch punch. Stand 1 inch from someone. Throw a punch that travels 1 inch. Send them flying backward across the room. There is footage of this, too. Physicists have tried to explain how it works. Most cannot. He had less than 3% body fat. His muscles were so defined that anatomists used his photographs to study human musculature. He could hold a 75-pound barbell straight out from his body, arms fully extended, for several seconds. Try that with 10 pounds. You will understand why this seems impossible. But here is what haunts me about Bruce Lee. He believed consciousness survived death, not as a vague spiritual hope, as a studied conviction. His personal library contained over 2,000 books. Zen Buddhism, Taoism, quantum physics, Western psychology, Hindu philosophy. He read constantly, questioned everything, wrote extensively in private journals. He developed his own philosophy, not just a fighting style, a way of understanding reality. Empty your mind, be formless, shapeless, like water. Most people know that quote. Most people think it is about fighting. It is not. Read his writings. He was describing consciousness itself. How awareness takes the shape of whatever contains it. How the self is not fixed, but fluid. He believed the mind was not trapped in the brain. That energy could be cultivated and directed in ways Western science dismissed as impossible. Then he died under circumstances that still make no sense. Let me walk you through what happened, because the details matter. July 20th, 1973. Bruce is in Hong Kong. He has a meeting scheduled with actor George Lazenby to discuss a film project. Before the meeting, Bruce goes to the apartment of Betty Ting Pei, an actress, rumored to be his mistress. His wife Linda was in America at the time. At some point, Bruce complains of a headache. Betty gives him a tablet of Equagesic, a combination of aspirin and a muscle relaxant called Meprobamate. Common painkiller? Nothing exotic. Bruce lies down in Betty's bed to rest. He falls asleep. The meeting with Lazenby was scheduled for that evening. When Bruce does not show up, Producer Raymond Chow goes to Betty's apartment looking for him. They try to wake Bruce. He does not respond. They call a doctor. The doctor tries to revive him for 10 minutes. Nothing works. Bruce Lee is rushed to Queen Elizabeth Hospital. By the time he arrives, it is too late. He is pronounced dead at 11:30 in the evening. He was 32 years old, in the best physical condition of his life, preparing to become the biggest movie star in the world. The autopsy revealed that his brain had swollen from its normal weight of about 1,400 grams to 1,575 grams, a 13% increase, massive cerebral edema. But here is the problem. There was no tumor, no hemorrhage, no infection, no trauma, nothing that would normally cause the brain to swell like that. The official verdict was hypersensitivity to one of the compounds in Equigesic, an allergic reaction. But Bruce Lee had taken Equigesic before, multiple times. No reaction. And there is another problem. 2 months before he died, Bruce experienced nearly identical symptoms. He was dubbing dialogue for Enter the Dragon when he suddenly collapsed. Convulsions, loss of consciousness. He was rushed to the hospital where doctors found his brain had swollen dangerously. They could not explain why, but he recovered. Same symptoms, same mysterious brain swelling, same lack of explanation. The first time, he survived. The second time, he did not. What happened in those 2 months? What changed? No one knows. Conspiracy theories emerged immediately and have never gone away. Theory 1. The Triads. Hong Kong in the 1970s was controlled by organized crime. The Triads ran everything, entertainment included. Many Hong Kong film productions paid protection money. Many stars had arrangements with criminal organizations. Bruce Lee refused. He was American. He did not play by Hong Kong rules. He rejected Triad involvement in his productions. Some believe they made an example of him, a warning to others who might think they were too big to cooperate. Theory 2. Dim Mak, the touch of death, a legendary martial arts technique. A single strike to specific pressure points that disrupts the body's energy flow. The victim seems fine at first. Days or weeks later, they die of what appears to be natural causes. Most Western scientists dismiss Dim Mak as mythology. But Bruce Lee trained with masters who claimed it was real. He had enemies in the martial arts world, people who resented his success, his willingness to teach Chinese martial arts to non-Chinese students, his revolutionary approach that challenged traditional schools. Some believe a rival master struck him with Dim Mak, that his collapse in May was a delayed effect, that the second episode 2 months later was the final result. Theory 3. Poisoning. Betty Ting Pei was with him when he died. She gave him the pill. She had access to his food and drink. Was she working for someone? Did jealousy drive her to act alone? Was the Equigesic tablet tampered with? She has denied involvement for 50 years. But the questions have never stopped. Theory 4. The curse. This is where it gets strange. Bruce Lee's family seemed marked by tragedy. His older brother died as a child before Bruce was born. Bruce died at 32. And then there is Brandon. 20 years after Bruce died, his son Brandon was filming The Crow, a dark action movie. Brandon was the star. On March 31st, 1993, they were filming a scene where Brandon's character is shot. The prop gun was supposed to fire a blank, but something went wrong. A bullet fragment from a previous scene, a dummy round used for close-up shots, had become lodged in the barrel. When the blank was fired, It propelled the fragment like a real bullet. Brandon Lee was hit in the abdomen. He was rushed to the hospital. 12 hours later, he was dead. He was 28 years old. Two Lees, father and son, both dead before 35, both in circumstances that seemed preventable, both surrounded by questions that have never been answered. Some called it the Lee family curse, a pattern of tragedy that seemed to follow them. Others wondered if something else was happening, something that connected father and son across death itself. In 2022, a team of kidney specialists published a new theory about Bruce Lee's death in a clinical journal. They proposed hyponatremia, chronic water intoxication. Bruce Lee drank enormous amounts of water. He believed in flushing toxins from his body. He had an extremely low body fat percentage, which affects how the body processes fluids. The doctors suggested that over time, Bruce diluted the sodium in his blood. His kidneys could not excrete water fast enough. Fluid accumulated in his brain, causing the swelling that killed him. Their paper concluded with a striking statement. They said Bruce Lee died because he could not maintain water homeostasis. Be water, my friend. The philosophy he built his life around may have been what killed him. Or maybe that is just another theory, another attempt to explain the unexplainable. 50 years later, we still do not know. What we do know is this. 37 years after Bruce Lee died, a child was born in Nara, Japan, who would grow up to move exactly like him. Let me tell you about Ryusei Imai. His father, Ryusei Imai, grew up watching Bruce Lee movies. Nothing unusual about that. Millions of people did. One day, when Ryusei was just 1 year old, Ryuji put on Game of Death, Bruce Lee's final film. Background noise while he took care of his infant son. What happened next changed everything. The baby, who could barely walk, who could not form complete sentences, became completely still. His eyes locked onto the television screen, onto the figure in the yellow jumpsuit. This was not normal baby watching. Ryuji noticed it immediately. The intensity, the focus. Something in his son's eyes that did not belong on a 1-year-old face. And then Ryusei started trying to copy the movements. At 1 year old, Ryuji told himself it was random. Babies move their arms. They kick. It does not mean anything, but it kept happening. Every time Bruce Lee appeared on screen, Ryusei would lock in with that same intensity. And his movements were not random. He was attempting specific techniques, targeted replication of what he was seeing. By the time Ryusei turned 4, his parents knew they were dealing with something extraordinary. The boy demanded to train. Not because his parents pushed him. He would throw tantrums if they tried to stop him. He would become inconsolable if he could not practice. His daily schedule at 4 years old: wake at 6 in the morning, train for 90 minutes before preschool, come home in the afternoon, run for 1 hour, practice kicks, punches, and nunchaku for 2 more hours. 4.5 hours of intense training. Every single day. At 4 years old. Most children that age can barely focus for 5 minutes. Ryusei trained with the discipline of a professional athlete. His father tried to interest him in other things: video games, toys, sports, normal childhood activities. Ryusei had zero interest. When asked what else he liked to do besides martial arts, he would think for a moment and give an answer that stopped everyone cold. I only do Bruce Lee. Not karate. Not kung fu. Not martial arts in general. Bruce Lee. Specifically. Only Bruce Lee. By age 5, Ryusei could perform Bruce Lee's nunchaku routine from Game of Death. The scene where Bruce fights his way up a pagoda, facing different opponents on each floor. The scene where he battles the nunchaku master on the third floor. Professional martial artists spend years trying to master that routine. Many never get it right. Watch the comparison videos. They are on YouTube. Find them. Bruce Lee on one side, Ryusei on the other. The movements are identical. The timing is identical. The speed, the precision, the flow from one technique to the next. Frame-by-frame synchronization. A 5-year-old doing what trained adults cannot do. But here is the detail that separates this from a normal Prodigy story. Ryusei was never formally taught these techniques. His father is not a martial arts expert. They did not hire Jeet Kune Do instructors. They did not send him to a nunchaku academy. He learned by watching videos. At 1 year old. Let me repeat that. A baby who could not speak in complete sentences watched Bruce Lee movies and somehow absorbed techniques that take adults years to master. And not just absorb them intellectually. His body could perform them, instinctively, as if the knowledge was already there, waiting to be activated. By age 5, Ryusei had visible abdominal muscles, a 6-pack on a kindergartner. His body fat percentage was lower than most adult athletes. His physique developed as if following a template from someone who died decades before Ryusei was born. His father started posting videos online. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The first viral video showed Ryusei performing Bruce Lee's nunchaku routine with the original footage playing side by side. The resemblance was uncanny. Not just the moves, the presence, the intensity in his eyes. Millions of views in days. Media outlets around the world picked up the story. Yahoo Sports, Men's Health, The Daily Mail, Barcroft TV. They all used the same phrase, Mini Bruce Lee. In 2016, when Ryusei was 6 years old, NBC invited him to appear on Little Big Shots, the variety show hosted by Steve Harvey, executive produced by Ellen DeGeneres. Ryusei was featured in the premiere episode. 14.8 million people watched. This tiny Japanese boy walked onto the stage, stood in front of Steve Harvey, who has interviewed thousands of people over decades, and performed a Bruce Lee routine so perfect that the studio audience gasped. Steve Harvey seemed genuinely stunned. For once, the professional entertainer could not find words. He just stared. The audience gave Ryusei a standing ovation. The following year, Ryusei appeared on Little Big Shots Australia. The host asked him what superpower he would most like to have. Most children say flying, or super strength, or invisibility. Ryusei answered immediately, without hesitation, I want to have power like Bruce Lee. Not generic superpowers. Bruce Lee's power, specifically. By 2020, Ryusei had over 500,000 Instagram followers. His training videos received millions of views. He had become an international phenomenon. But none of that is why I am telling you this story. I am telling you because of what happened when Dan Inosanto heard about him. Let me explain who Dan Inosanto is, and why his reaction matters so much. Dan Inosanto was born in 1936. He started training in martial arts at age 11. Over the following decades, he became one of the most decorated martial artists in history. Black belts in more styles than most people know exist. But Dan Inosanto's name is forever linked to one person, Bruce Lee. They met in 1964 at a martial arts demonstration in Long Beach, California. the demonstration where Bruce Lee first revealed his extraordinary abilities to the American martial arts community. The two connected immediately. For the next 9 years, until Bruce's death in '73, they trained together almost every day. Dan was Bruce's student, his training partner, his closest friend in the martial arts world. Here is something most people do not know. Dan Inosanto is the one who introduced Bruce Lee to the nunchaku. Yes, the weapon that defines Bruce Lee's image, the weapon that everyone in the world associates with him. Dan taught him that weapon. He had studied Filipino martial arts, including various weapons, and he shared that knowledge with Bruce. Bruce then took the nunchaku to another level, developed speed and techniques that even Dan could not match, made it the most iconic martial arts weapon in film history. In 1972, Bruce asked Dan to appear in Game of Death, the pagoda scene. Dan plays the nunchaku master on the 3rd floor. Their fight together is the most famous nunchaku battle ever filmed. It is the exact scene that 5-year-old Ryusei Imai could replicate perfectly. When Bruce Lee died in '73, Dan Inosanto was one of 6 pallbearers. Steve McQueen was another. James Coburn was another. For 50 years since that funeral, Dan has dedicated his life to preserving Bruce Lee's legacy. He runs the Inosanto Academy of Martial Arts in Marina del Rey, California. He is considered the foremost living authority on Jeet Kune Do. This man has watched thousands of martial artists try to imitate Bruce Lee over 5 decades. He has trained Hollywood actors. He has seen every level of talent. So when someone showed him a video of a 5-year-old Japanese boy performing the exact nunchaku routine from his fight scene with Bruce, performing it perfectly, what did he do? He got on a plane and flew to Japan. I need you to understand why this matters. An 80-year-old man, one of the most respected martial artists on the planet, traveling across the Pacific Ocean to meet a child he had never met. Why would he do that? What could he possibly have seen in that video that compelled him to make that journey? The meeting happened. Dan Inosanto traveled to Nara, met Ryusei and his family in person. But he did not just observe from a distance. He did not simply watch and nod politely. He trained with the boy, personally, worked with him on techniques, evaluated him with the expert eye of someone who had spent 60 years mastering martial arts and 9 years training alongside Bruce Lee himself. And then they did something that gives me chills every time I think about it. They traveled together to Seattle, Washington, to Lakeview Cemetery, to plot number 276, the grave of Bruce Lee. Picture this scene. Dan Inosanto, who had carried Bruce Lee's coffin 5 decades earlier, standing at his grave. Next to him, a Japanese boy who moves exactly like his dead friend. The man who knew Bruce Lee's movements better than anyone alive. And the child whose movements he recognized. There are photographs from that day. I encourage you to find them. Look at Dan Inosanto's face as he watches Ryusei at Bruce Lee's grave. It is not just admiration. It is not just appreciation for talent. There is something else in his expression. Something that looks like recognition. Like he is seeing something he did not expect to see again. Dan Inosanto is a careful man, a practical man, a scientist of movement and technique. He has spent 60 years in martial arts. He does not make supernatural claims lightly. But listen to what he has actually said about Ryusei. He confirmed that Ryusei's abilities are genuine, that his speed, his timing, his precision are extraordinary for any age, let alone a child. He said watching Ryusei, is unlike watching any other child prodigy he has ever encountered in 60 years of martial arts. And then he said something that stopped me cold when I first heard it. He said watching Ryusei reminds him of watching Bruce. Not watching Bruce Lee movies. Not watching videos of what Bruce could do. Watching Bruce, the person. As if he were watching the man himself. This is coming from someone who trained with Bruce Lee every single day for 9 years, who fought him on camera, who knew his movements as well as anyone alive. When that person says a child reminds him of watching his dead friend, it carries weight. What does Dan Inosanto know that he is not saying directly? What did he feel standing at that grave with this child? So what is actually happening here? Let me present the evidence, and you can decide. At the University of Virginia, researchers have spent over 60 years studying cases of children who seem to remember previous lives. Dr. Ian Stevenson documented over 3,000 cases before he died. His successor, Dr. Jim Tucker, continues the research today. They use rigorous scientific methodology, verify claims, rule out alternative explanations, publish in peer-reviewed academic journals. What they found challenges everything we think we know about consciousness. Case after case of children who knew names and places from lives that ended before they were born. Children who recognized strangers as family members from supposed past lives. Children with birthmarks that corresponded to wounds from how their previous personality died. And something else. Something directly relevant to Ryusei. Behavioral memories, cases where skills transfer. Not just facts. Not just memories. Actual abilities. Dr. Stevenson documented a boy in Turkey who could tie complex knots without being taught. Sailor knots. Specialized maritime techniques. The man he claimed to have been was a dock worker who died before the boy was born. He documented a girl in Sri Lanka who could make pottery before age 3 with no training whatsoever. Professional quality work. She claimed to have been a potter in a previous life. The village she described was real. The potter she claimed to be was verified to have existed. He documented children who could speak languages they had never heard, who could play instruments they had never touched, who had talents that seemed to come from nowhere, skills that appeared to transfer from one life to the next. If this phenomenon is real, then Ryusei Imai is exactly what we would expect. A child who manifests abilities of a specific deceased person. Abilities that appeared at an impossibly young age. Abilities verified by experts who knew the original person. But there is one more case I need to tell you about. Because it shows this pattern with evidence that convinced even skeptics. James Leininger was born in Louisiana in 1998. By age 2, he started having nightmares. Terrible nightmares. He would wake up screaming that his plane was on fire, that it was crashing, that he could not get out. Over time, he revealed specific details. His name had been James. He flew a Corsair fighter. He was shot down by the Japanese, near an island called Iwo Jima. His ship was called the Natoma Bay. His parents were evangelical Christians. They did not believe in reincarnation. They thought their son was having psychological problems. They took him to doctors, but something about his details nagged at them. So they investigated. They found a ship called USS Natoma Bay. It was an escort carrier that served in the Pacific during World War II. They found records of a pilot named James Houston, Jr. He flew Corsairs off the Natoma Bay. On March 3, 1945, during the Battle of Iwo Jima, his plane was hit by Japanese anti-aircraft fire. The engine caught fire. The plane crashed into the ocean. James Houston, Jr. was killed. He was 21 years old. Every detail their 2-year-old son had described was accurate. But here is the part relevant to Ryusei. Young James started drawing pictures of aerial combat at age 3. Sophisticated pictures. Accurate details about World War II aircraft that no one taught him. He could identify different planes on sight. He knew things about Corsair fighters that only pilots would know. Skills that matched a fighter pilot. A fighter pilot who died 50 years before James was born. This is the same pattern we see with Ryusei Imai. Not just memories, skills, embodied knowledge. Things the body knows how to do without being taught. The James Leininger case was investigated extensively, featured on ABC News, published in a best-selling book. The evidence was strong enough that even hardened skeptics struggled to explain it away. And now we have Ryusei, documented on video from age 1, witnessed by millions, verified by Bruce Lee's own training partner. If James Leininger suggests the possibility that consciousness survives death, then Ryusei Imai is that possibility caught on camera. Here is what I keep coming back to. Normal prodigies love a domain. Mozart loved music. Chess prodigies love chess. A martial arts prodigy would love martial arts in general. Ryusei does not love martial arts in general. He loves Bruce Lee specifically. When asked what martial arts he wants to learn, he says Bruce Lee's martial arts. When asked what movies he likes, he says Bruce Lee movies. When asked what he wants to be, he says Bruce Lee. Not a martial artist. Bruce Lee. This is not a child exploring a discipline. This is a child with a fixation on a single dead person that defies normal explanation. And his body. His body developed to match. 6-pack abs at age 5. A physique that mirrors Bruce Lee's legendary build, as if his physical development was following a template established decades before he was born. Bruce Lee had a philosophy about water. Empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. You put water in a cup, it becomes the cup. You put it in a bottle, it becomes the bottle. Water can flow, or it can crash. What if consciousness is like water? What if it does not end when the body dies? What if it flows into a new container, takes a new shape, continues in a different form? A new child in Nara, Japan. Ryusei Imai is a teenager now. The media frenzy has quieted. Reports suggest his parents separated. His mother has become more protective about his exposure. This is probably for the best. Whatever Ryusei is, whatever he represents, he deserves space to grow, to become whoever he is meant to be. But the question remains, what are we actually seeing when we watch him move? Extraordinary talent combined with obsessive practice, or something else? Something that suggests consciousness does not end when the body dies? I do not have the answer. I am not sure anyone does. But I know this. Dan Inosanto, who knew Bruce Lee better than almost anyone alive, traveled across an ocean to meet this child, trained with him, took him to Bruce Lee's grave. You do not do that for a talented imitator. You do that when you recognize something, when you feel something you cannot explain, when you see your dead friend looking back at you from a child's eyes. Maybe that is what happened. Maybe it is not. But something is happening with Ryusei Imai, something that millions of people have felt when they watch him move. A recognition, a resonance, a sense that they are witnessing something beyond normal talent. Bruce Lee said, "Do not think, feel." Maybe that is how we should approach this. Not with pure logic and skepticism, but with openness, with wonder, with the willingness to accept that consciousness might be stranger than we have ever allowed ourselves to believe. The investigation continues. The water keeps flowing. And somewhere in Japan, a teenager who moves like a dragon continues to train, continues to grow, continues to embody a legend who supposedly died 50 years ago. Be water, my friend. The circle never ends. It only transforms. If this case grabbed you the way it grabbed me, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Tell me what you think is really happening with Ryusei Imai. Is he the reincarnation of Bruce Lee? An extraordinary prodigy? Something else entirely? What do you make of Dan Inosanto's reaction? Why would Bruce Lee's closest friend fly across an ocean to meet this child? And if you have ever encountered abilities that could not be explained by normal learning, share your story. Every case matters. Every piece of evidence adds to our understanding. If you are new to Circle of Lifetimes, welcome. This is what we do. We investigate documented cases of children who appear to remember previous lives. We examine the evidence. We ask questions that mainstream media refuses to ask. Check out the JFK case and the Princess Diana case in the playlist. They will change how you think about consciousness and identity. Subscribe if you want more investigations like this. Turn on notifications so you never miss one. Thank you for watching. Thank you for thinking. Thank you for feeling. This has been Circle of Lifetimes. Until next time, remember, the circle never ends. It only transforms.